Hey Year 12s, today we're discussing whose reality. If this isn't your context, or you're not confident about what the task of context involves, stop. Go and watch our videos on context in general, or on your own context. There are 4 possible texts you could be studying for whose reality, each of which you'll find specific pages and videos for on here, but first you need to understand the big ideas of the context which we will be discussing in this video. First, let's think about what is reality. This context invites you to question what is real and what is not, and what it means for something to be real. Furthermore, the phrasing of the context topic as a question indicates that we should explore not only the concept of reality, but how it can be shaped by the individuals who experience it. The notion of subjectivity in an individual's understanding of reality leads to many questions for consideration. What causes individuals to form different ideas about their situation? What makes one person's reality different from another's? What are the effects of conflicting realities? These questions run through all of the big ideas we're going to look at today. So on to our first big idea, subjectivity versus objectivity in relation to the concept of reality. One of the biggest questions we could ask of life is that of objectivity versus subjectivity. There are 2 main possibilities for our realities. Either there is an objective reality out there, but we're prevented from experiencing it because of all the subjective factors that shape our perception, or there was no objective reality to begin with, and the notion of objectivity is unattainable. The first scenario takes into consideration how and why humans see the world differently. The second scenario is a deeply philosophical consideration, one which considers that each of us has no way of knowing of the existence of anything outside of ourselves. Fundamentally, unless greater answers are offered by death, each of us has no way of knowing whether or not we are all experiencing a virtual reality rather than the world we know. Whose reality is not asking you to answer this question, merely to consider it. Let's slow down for a moment so I can explain objectivity and subjectivity through an example. For the sake of argument, let's forget about philosophy and agree that this thing behind me is objectively a painting. We can both agree on that. It is an objective truth for the purposes of this example. Subjectivity comes into it when we go beyond what it is in a physical sense. For example, whether or not it is art is a subjective truth. We might not both agree because art is not a set idea. It depends on the individual. Furthermore, this painting doesn't induce in us the same feelings or thoughts. It makes me think about being at work and being on camera, but it probably has a completely different meaning for you. These are our subjective truths, formed by the particular viewpoint from which we come. This naturally leads us onto questioning how an individual's subjective reality is formed. There are many factors that can influence someone's view of reality. These are just a few examples. Their upbringing or childhood, their experiences, memories, their religion or values, their race and their culture, their gender, their intelligence. These factors contribute to the way we perceive and interpret reality, resulting in different worldviews between individuals. As well as these background characteristics, there are a range of other factors that can influence one's reality, like memory and emotion. Let's think about memory for a second. If you have previously experienced an event, or have prior knowledge of a person's character, you may act differently towards them than you would otherwise. In this way, our memories of the past change how we see the reality of the present, and therefore it is often what we recall that influences us more than the actual facts of the event. Subsequently, as different individuals store and focus on different memories, this leads to differences in their present realities. It is not only past experiences that shape our reality, but the way we recall those experiences from our memory. Importantly, memory is a notoriously limited information storage center. As time passes, our memories are distorted and altered, and our subjective feelings about the content of that memory change too. And what about emotion? Our emotional landscape can often have a great influence on how we see ourselves, others, and situations. Consider your own reality in regards to tackling VCE. This will be colored by a range of feelings, possibly including stress, pride, or enthusiasm. In conjunction with memory, our feelings of past events can sometimes influence us more than our understanding of them from a logical standpoint. This factor is key in shaping reality as we rely on this interpretation when making decisions about our behavior in the present and into the future. All of what we just spoke about relates back to subjectivity. Let's change tact and consider a different big idea, exploring how and why individuals create false realities. Sometimes humans refuse to accept the reality they are faced with, instead twisting it to suit their needs. All of us do this on a daily basis in small ways, lying to ourselves in small ways to make the world more palatable. But sometimes the scope of these created realities can be much greater, and have larger consequences than those daily lies. There are many reasons why a person may create a false reality, but most relate back to the idea of escapism. This word describes a process of escaping an unpleasant reality through the creation of fantasy or the seeking of distractions. When life places great pressure upon an individual, they might opt for a world other than the one they live in, which is too stressful to be comfortable. Although evasion of reality can often be a conscious decision, sometimes one's subconscious can lead them to reject the truth. Consider the placebo effect, the improvement in one's medical results once they believe they're receiving treatment for their problem, regardless of whether they actually are getting effective medical assistance. Although the person may wish to feel better, they are unable to consciously have an effect on their health. However, once they believe that they're being treated in a certain way, their symptoms can improve. This demonstrates how one's subconscious can construct beneficial scenarios. There are a range of consequences that can ensue from this creation, both for the person doing the creating and those around them. If a reality is totally constructed from one's imagination, it is much more likely to clash with the realities experienced by other people. Conversely, living a life with only a slight level of fantasy is less likely to lead to conflicts with others. Because of this, the stability of constructed realities is questionable. Consider an individual who lives completely in their own world and would be considered mentally insane by society. If they constantly came into contact with evidence that contradicts their idea of the truth, this could lead to great internal conflict. The two polar outcomes of this, therefore, are receiving a jolt back into reality or continue spiraling into deeper levels of delusion. So, here's the rub with these constructed realities. Are they still reality? Again, there's no set answer here, because reality is a notoriously hard to define concept. If a person creates a reality, are they wrong or crazy simply because their reality differs to that of others? To quote George Orwell in his seminal fiction 1984, a lunatic is just a minority of one. If someone truly believes that the world they have imagined is reality, what is to stop it from being so? Simply because it differs from the reality that the majority of people face, to the one individual it may still seem completely real. And if reality is subjective, whether something seems real is much more important than if it is actually real. A kind of great quote to sum up this idea comes from the last Harry Potter book. Harry asks Dumbledore, "Is this real? Or has this been happening inside my head?" To which Dumbledore replies, "Of course it is happening inside your head, Harry, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real?" Alright, one last big idea to consider. How can individuals control realities for others? Some groups and individuals hold significant power over the reality that most people experience on a daily basis. Our sources of information, and those that control the way society operates, have the power to change the way we live and experience the world. For example, the media, politicians, teachers, and parents all have a huge influence on individuals. Think about these groups and what sort of information you've gotten from them. This isn't in and of itself a bad thing, but when that power is abused, it can lead to negative outcomes. It must also be considered that this power is held overwhelmingly by a limited group of people from a very privileged position within society, and might further entrench that group's power if left unchecked. Just think, for example, if your history teacher decided to teach you completely factually incorrect information. You can see how that would be a clear example of controlling reality for another. If that example seems a bit ridiculous, think about it in relation to the media. Journalists may not decide to write incorrect information, but their view of the facts they report is colored by their own subjective reality. Subjectivity is bias, and bias creeps into all that we interpret and create. You can see how powerful groups can start to shape the way you see reality, particularly given the saturation of the media in our modern society. Alright, that's a lot of big ideas to think about. Don't worry if you're feeling overwhelmed right now. It'll all make sense with some practice. Thanks for watching, and happy studying.